Today's material is a bit of a change of pace. We have had a lot of practice looking at derivatives of functions, and this is going to give us a better way to calculate limits in certain specific circumstances. So if I had to calculate a limit of a function like this, let's say I've got cosine of pi x divided by 1/2 minus x. And I want to take the limit as x approaches 1/2. Both the numerator and the denominator are continuous functions. Cosine is a continuous function. Polynomials are continuous. So direct substitution would tell me, well, let's try to say, well, what happens if I just plug in x equals 1/2? Well, the numerator is going to be 0. Cosine of pi on 2 is 0. And the denominator is also going to be 0. So that's not going to work, right? I would have to have some other way of figuring out what number this limit should be, if it even is a number at all. Now, let's go to the graphs of the numerator and the denominator separately. So in red here, I've got cosine of pi times x. In blue, I've got 1/2 minus x. And here is the coordinate where I'm interested in. X is equal to 1/2, and both of the functions are 0. So what's the deal? I don't want to be graphing every single time I go to calculate a limit, but I can use this picture to give myself a useful idea. So the whole problem is that when I divide these two functions, if they were just polynomials, I would say, let's factor that 0 out and then try the limit on whatever is left. But cosine of pi x doesn't have an obvious 0 to factor out in the same way. So the key idea is let's zoom in on the graph. And the further I zoom in, because both of these functions are differentiable, the more these functions look like two different lines. So this cosine of pi x function looks very much like, some line. This y equals minus x plus 1/2, well, that just is a line. So maybe I can find a formula here to replace the cosine function. So I know that the equation for the tangent line here is going to be y minus cosine of pi on 2. And this will be equal to the slope, which I'll call m for right now, times x minus 1/2. And what is the slope? It's going to be the derivative of this function at the coordinate x equals 1/2. So I know the derivative is pi times the sine of pi x, and x equals 1/2. Excuse me, minus sine is the derivative. So this green line is my linear approximation, and I should be able to replace the cosine by this equation, because if I zoom in close enough, I can't actually tell those two functions apart. Well, let's see what that does for the limit.